Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining. We are waiting for the rest of the participants to join, and we'll be starting in a few minutes. Thank you. So, if you want, you can tell us where you're from. Anyone wants to say hello? Hello, Nelson. Hello, Nayara.
Hi guys, I guess I can say a couple of words. Based in Lisbon, I've worked in the tokenization of real-world assets with some companies that actually have worked with investment-grade wines. I'm quite curious about this topic because I know it's a big market and there's lots of things to be done. And I feel like the connection with the wine world and the crypto world is kind of like makes total sense. So especially if we think about on top of that the sustainability aspect and what people are doing around different, biodiversity assets like carbon or others. I feel like there's so many things that could be done in the wine industry, and I'm looking forward to kind of like revolutionize this old industry and put it in the 21st century.
Totally. Thank you, Nathan. Nice to have you. So we still have some participants joining in, so we are going to wait 4 or 5 minutes more and then we'll begin. Hello, Mario. Nice to have you. You too. Well, if you like, let's get started. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. My name is Francisco Silvestre. I'm the CCO of Woodchick company. We are hosting this webinar, and now I leave you in the hands of Milagros, our main speaker. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Francisco, for the introduction. Thank you everyone as well for being here. I'm pretty sure that the topic of this presentation or this webinar actually is of your interest and the way how two industries that seem so different yet can be so similar. An ancient art as wine and a neon disruptive industry as blockchain can actually have a lot to do with each other, and there's a lot that can be done with it as well. In this webinar, I'm not alone. Our also guest speaker and presenter is Mike Tango Bravo, the director of OpenVino and also founder of Costa Flores Organic Vineyard, which was the first vineyard in the world to tokenize bottles of wine. Thank you as well, Mike, for having us. And what we're going to do today is make this webinar divided into 2 or 3 steps. I'm going to start with a more theoretical introduction on, for those who are not so familiar with the Web3 industry or the blockchain world, so to speak, a little bit of what is or what are the main characteristics and core characteristics of blockchain and how they can be applied in the wine industry for different means, usually for either sustainable solutions or financial solutions. Reality is that it can be for both. And after this, the idea is to go to a more practical scenario where we're going to use, or we're going to present with Mike his project of OpenVino as well as through Costa Flores Organic Vineyard on how this can be implemented on a very comprehensive use case. We also have planned to do a giveaway of 6 bottles of MTB 2021. Those are Mike's tokenized bottles of wine from Costa Flores. So whoever is interested in participating, please reach out to us on the comment. You're going to see the email of one of our members, of Alejandra, so you can send her an email, and that way you can participate as well in the giveaway. After that, we're going to have, or even before the giveaway, we're going to open up for some questions and finally some conclusions of what we've seen. If that's clear enough, I would ask you guys as well to leave the questions to the end, as I just mentioned, and or even write them down so we can address them later. Without further ado, I can give start to the presentation. And again, thank you everyone for being here. There you go. So when we start talking about blockchain, and the first things that come to our mind have usually to do with more general and speculative ideas that blockchain is Bitcoin and Bitcoin is speculation, and speculation has to do with Ponzi scheme. And reality is that blockchain is a lot more than this, and usually misinformation can scare us away from the potentiality of what can be done with it. With this, I mean that blockchain is a lot more than just the cryptocurrencies that we mostly hear about. It's a lot more than just Bitcoin as a payment network or as a cryptocurrency or Ethereum or any kind of other coins or shit coins that can be called. We're talking about a new kind of World Wide Web. We're talking about a new stage in technology that enables us to interact in a different way without requiring trust. That's why you will see a lot of people talk about the Web 2 and the Web 3. Web 3 is this new stage in the internet in technology that arises partly thanks to blockchain and other technologies as well, that helps us interact in a different way. But don't be mistaken, we can see Web 2 as this big continent that of information and of the internet that we already know with social media and platforms. And the Web 3 is this new island that's emerging, but they actually have a lot to do together and share the same oceans, on the sense that Web 2 is still around Web 3. But to be even clearer on what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to define the main characteristics of blockchain technology and later on how these ones can be applied into the wine industry. So blockchain is a decentralized ledger. This ledger, what it does, it has the characteristic of being transparent, of being traceable, of immutability of the information that you input into this ledger. Why is this important? Because everything that you put there can therefore not be changed. There are different ways to do it, actually, but we will be talking about more specific subjects, like, for example, forks, but that's too specific. But what we need to know is that we're talking about a decentralized data ledger that exists around across a whole network of computers around the world. And this is important because this helps that every time we put information in this ledger, whatever kind of input we want to do, it's going to be available for everyone to look at when we're talking about an open, for example, or public blockchain. And it's going to be easy to trace and also easy to find. And it's going to be something reliable and relatable, because it's going to be something that you're not going to be able to easily change. It's going to be very useful for different kind of processes or supply chain management, depending on the industry that we're talking about. So the main idea that we're talking about is that we're talking about a distributed data ledger that's transparent, traceable, and immutable. Okay, we already started with this main idea and how we can later on adapt it. But this doesn't end here. Because of this technology, or the first time it appeared, which was with the Bitcoin payment network, and then also the Bitcoin cryptocurrency, which are different things, is that later on in 2014, the second most important one appeared, which was Ethereum. When Ethereum appeared, is that the possibility of also coding smart contracts into this blockchain became an option. Smart contracts can sound a little bit scary, but not the same thing as real life contracts in paper. But we're actually still talking about code. We're still talking about software. We're talking about a certain code that's self-executionary, meaning that if certain conditions are matched, certain things are going to happen, and that also helps the automation of different kind of processes. So going back to it, we're again talking about a decentralized data ledger with transparency, traceability, and that's immutable, and that enables the creation of smart contracts for the automation of different kind of processes or actions to happen. And the important part, and also interesting part that we can mention over here, is that we can start talking about digital assets. We can start talking about tokens. Now, tokens can both represent digitally assets and non-assets. And this is what becomes or creates a game changer in different business models and different industries as well. To give you an example, and for this not to be confusing, my title or my diploma as a lawyer is something that can be tokenized, can be digitally represented. When we're talking about a token, we're talking about the digital representation of something. And this would be a token that's not an asset. But at the same time, we can also tokenize asset. And when we will be talking about crypto assets. We can have tokens that are 100% digital native, or we can have as well tokens that represent something that exists in the physical. Therefore, we have different types of tokens. We have tokens that can be payment tokens. This is where Bitcoin comes in, or Ethereum and cryptocurrencies. Or we can have different kind of, for example, payment tokens that are stable coins that are pegged to fiat currencies. This can be a little bit too confusing at the beginning, but the important thing that I'm trying to say is that through this ledger, yes? Okay. So through this ledger, where we can put a lot of information that's transparent, that's traceable, that's also immutable, and that helps us create through small contracts, different kind of tokens, we can enable new markets, we can enable different products to arrive to new markets through the tokenization of either goods or services, what would be a utility token, or even financial models. If I could ask part of the audience to mute the microphones, that'd be great, and also leave the questions to the last minutes, that would also be good. So we have this first ideas of what are the main characteristics, or the most important things to point out on blockchain. That's good. Why is it important? It's important to many different stakeholders inside and outside of the Web3, because it helps redefine interactions between agents, because they no longer need to rely or trust each other at the moment of engaging different kind of transactions. Also, the fact that transactions do not require third parties to verify them, because blockchain already has, depending on the blockchain that we're talking about, different consensus mechanisms. So agents get to redefine their interactions in a safer context, and also playing and utilizing different kind of incentives, because these ones can also be tokenized. Again, what can we tokenize? Pretty much everything, being an asset, being non-assets. And this is the first idea of what I'm trying to transmit when we talk about blockchain, and to go beyond the common misconceptions on the fact that blockchain is only Bitcoin, and that's only speculation, and that's only a Ponzi scheme, and only DeFi. That's only misinformation, and it's the lack of information that can make us afraid of what can be done and what is actually being done, and the real value that can come from it. After this short introduction on the basics on how this can be applied into wine, is that the same and core characteristics can also be seen in it. Usually what we've seen so far is that either wineries or wine producers or distributors care about what the sustainability effects that blockchain can have into their businesses or the financial effects that they can have into the businesses. In both cases, we're going to see that we're having as well a fidelity effect in consumers too, because they also have the access to all this information that otherwise would suffer from the asymmetry of information that usually happens from centralized data ledgers. So let's start on why this can be something, for example, beneficial for sustainability for wineries or wine producers. And this can also apply to actually different kind of liquids and different kinds of standards that we're going to mention, and also different kinds of businesses inside of agribusiness. Because of the fact that we have this data ledger that's transparent and traceable, is that blockchain is very good for supply management, is very good for resource management, because all the information that you put inside of it, all the data input that you're actually having is being recorded, it's being stored, and it's also being available for everyone to actually see and have constantly. This means that the different stakeholders, and especially the wineries and the producers, can have constantly, or can have now in a very clear way, a very good follow-up of what they're doing with their practices regarding their own vineyards, for example, and whether they're being compliant or not with the different sustainable standards and programs that they're trying to follow up. From this moment as well, they have a better understanding of the resources that they're using, the water they're also misusing, and how this actually helps in their water footprint or carbon footprint. This means and equals a better resource management of what they're doing, which immediately also means a better reduction of costs that they wouldn't realize they're doing otherwise. So it's very simple, the idea of how we can translate the core characteristics of traceability, immutability, and as well of transparency of using blockchain on the whole supply chain and the processes that can be used into the wine, into the wineries and vineyards, for example. This is the first step. This is the step of putting all the information and making it available to the different stakeholders, because in the end, if good practices are being done, that means that there should be nothing to actually be hiding. And this also means that the consumers, the people who are actually having or drinking the wine or buying it, are going to be able to certify with their own eyes when they reach it that things are being done correctly. This doesn't finish here, but also the fact that because of everything being put out there and available, is that data certification can be done, and self-certification from the wineries of different practices can also happen. I'm very happy that Mike is here with us, because it's going to be an excellent example, a very comprehensive of all these uses of blockchain into the wine industry already being developed. So these ideas seem pretty easy to follow up. We have everything transparent, we have people and the different stakeholders that we care about that can see it, and we can have a very resource management. The interesting part as well is that we can also combine it in something else. If we can have a clear image, for example, of our water footprint or carbon footprint, we can therefore have, for example, a digital certification on our water savings, and we're being, for example, compliant or okay with the concept of water neutrality. What can be done with this is, with this digital certification of the water savings for water neutrality, could be later on as well be either traded or given for those or the farmers that we work with to have an extra income, or even sell it in a different way. In an analogous way can be done as well with carbon, accessing new markets as well, and better economic incentives for the practices that we're actually doing. This is maybe harder or more challenging to understand, because it would be an extra step of the positive things that would come from all this data certification and storage and accumulation of information and symmetry of information that would be providing to the different parties. This would be on the beginning as well of how sustainability is something that would be one of the benefits of the using of blockchain technology in the wine industry. Also showing this way that we're being compliant with sustainable practices and programs that other way would be more costly in time and money to show, but different certifiers, for example. This does not mean that it would be out of the picture, but means that their role into this kind of processes would also be redefined. And the different things that we could input or could be input inside of the blockchain regarding the water supplies or the water usage, for example, or the supply chain that we're talking about, has also to do with labor in the vine, the workload that's being worked on by the workers every day, the different adherence to labor and human rights standards, and a different analysis as well that could be done at the same time. Even what kind of products that we're utilizing. This is where we're being transparent, not only with regulators, but as well with stakeholders like investors, and especially the consumers that get to finally get back part of the power of deciding, okay, what I see in the label is something that I can certify now with my own eyes when I look at it. But even though sadly, sustainability and doing the right thing for the environment is not the main incentive for all players, there's also the fact that there are different uses of blockchain into the wine industry and other industries that could be interesting from a financial point of view. And this is the use of tokenization of different things or the processes or different goods in the business model. Specifically, we could talk about the tokenization of the bottles of wine. We could talk about the tokenization of barrels of wine. This would be a way of actually pre-selling, for example, from the moment of harvest until the moment of the bottle being completely ready in the hands of the buyer, and helping to optimize the cash cycle about the use case that we're going to show with Mike's going to give a specific percentage of around 70%, which is a financial effect that's always positive, and also saving on capital work. So we're seeing how the playfulness that we can have, or actually the smart use that we can have and different incentives inside of the business model, can go from sustainable incentives, reputational incentives, and as well economic incentives. So parties don't only do the right thing when they have to interact with each other and with their own business model, but they also get economic benefits when they try to do it. And more things can add up on the uses of blockchain in the wine industry. Because if we think about each person interacting with the tokens, for example, of a winery, or creating a wine club with different kind of benefits, with experiences with wine tastings, or experience regarding buying a bottle, or experiences actually verifying if something is as they say there is, then we can also have the creation of a community that combines both the blockchain world and the wine world in one, and how that can even grow to the creation of DAOs that Mike will most likely later on talk about, and on the things that OpenVino has on the roadmap, and also other uses that we could even play with or think of, as the idea of tokenizing full parcels of different wineries for the holders of tokens to decide through the growth of the wine what to do and who to be the persons in charge to make decisions and to grow with the wine as it's finally in the bottle. There are different ideas of what can be done, but one of the main things that we wanted to transmit in this first part is the core characteristics of blockchain, how this can be directly applied into the sustainability means of it, as well as the tokenization of the bottles of wine, and how both of them can also be combined. Because if we're doing the whole process already in this first part of traceability with blockchain, and we're going to mention, we're going to use more technologies than just blockchain, like IoT and AI and different kind of sensors and cameras, is that we already have everything pretty much set up if we consider the use of tokenization of bottles of wine to help the business model and to optimize the cash cycle. Up to this part, I would love to invite Mike into the conversation, so this talk can stop being only theoretical of what can be done and show what's already being done since 2017 by Mike, and how his experience has been, and the roadmap of the things that he wants to do are also there. So Mike, if you'd like to join us, that'd be amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Good to talk to you guys today. So Millie touched on a bunch of different points, in particular tokenization of wines, the traceability and transparency, and what we call biodigital certification of wines, and also traceability that relates to the relationship that a winery can have with end customers. And so I'd just like to go over those three stages and explain how this works with OpenVino. So I'm a small wine producer in Mendoza, Argentina.
Started in 2003 planting a vineyard and started producing wine in 2007. We started working on OpenVino in about 2016 and launched our first wine-backed crypto asset or token in 2018. Just a week before last, we harvested our grapes here for 2023. So on the 6th of May, we'll be issuing what will be our 6th annual vintage coin offering, or tokens for the current harvest. So let me just explain how each one of these three functions works. I don't know if I can have the presentation.
Yes.
Great. So let's talk first about tokenization of wines. Basically, the cycle looks like this. We harvest the grapes. Like I said, we harvested here this year just a couple of weeks ago. Of course, this is something we've been doing the same way pretty much for the past 10,000 years. Releasing, letting yeast do the thing and turn our nice must into wine. Currently, we're fermenting. So the next couple of weeks, we essentially have wine that exists in a discrete and finite quantity, meaning that there's only X amount of wine that you're going to produce in a year in a harvest, and that corresponds to this year. So we can't add more 2023 of our wine in the future without committing serious fraud. So it has a finite amount. There's a scarcity built into a product like wine. After a few weeks, near the end of April, we pretty much know exactly how much wine we're going to have for 2023, and therefore we can calculate the number of bottles that will be coming from this production. So what we do is, on the 6th of May, and this is an arbitrary date that we decided upon for tokenizing the wines from my winery, from Costa Flores. Other wineries, of course, will have different tokenization rules that they want to do with theirs. But essentially, we issue an equivalent amount of tokens on the Ethereum blockchain that correspond to the number of bottles of wine. And so, to give you an example, our first year that we tokenized in 2018, we calculated 16,384 bottles. We issued 16,384 tokens. And we put these tokens up, at least a percentage of these tokens, during what we call a VCO, or vintage coin offering period. In our case, it runs from the 6th of May to the 25th of July. There is a set price that these tokens that people can purchase. It's a very economical price for basically, in our case, starting at a cost basis. What does it cost for us to produce this wine? And people can go and access through our platform, OpenVino Exchange, interact with a smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain, where basically they're sending the currency of Ethereum, which is called ETH, to a smart contract through a web interface, and they're receiving in exchange an equivalent amount of tokens. And remember, each token is equivalent to one bottle. So this is how we jumpstart our initial sale of tokens that are backed by wine. It means, from the winery's perspective, of course, that we can start to receive revenue from wine that is really just finished its fermentation. This wine, in our case, is not ready to drink. All wines need some time to rest before they're ready to consume. They're very harsh. When you first make a wine, it needs time. And in our case, we start enabling the process of redeem, so that somebody can exchange the token for the bottle after 3 years. So if you bought a token in May of 2023, in 2026, you could redeem those tokens for bottles. And we fixed in this particular tokenization that the token has a lifespan of 10 years. So you have up to 10 years to do something with the token. Now, exchanging the token for the bottle is one thing you can do, but after the 25th of July, the tokens are also available to be sold, again, to OpenVino Exchange, which is just a web interface for smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. So essentially, if you bought tokens at any time, you can buy them at any time and you can hold them, redeem them later, you can sell them, you can send them to somebody else, you can do any kind of trading. And basically, we've just created this asset backed by the bottle. Now, what's interesting about tokenizing wine as opposed to a lot of other assets is basically a few things. First of all, as I mentioned before, you have scarcity. So there's X amount of wine that we're going to have. There's only going to be that amount for that vintage. And it's not something we can add to later. So it's got built-in scarcity. The second thing is has to do with the elasticity of prices of wine. So, you know, we have wines that cost $2 a bottle, and we have wines that cost $20,000 a bottle, and everything in between. And the wine market has a lot of elasticity, and in fact can have a lot of volatility in the price. And so that makes it something interesting to do a digital asset for. And the third aspect is that wine, unlike only a very few other products in the world, gets better over time, right? If you hold on to that bottle, or in this case, the token, the quality of the wine is going to improve over time. But unlike spirits, for example, whiskey, the improvement over time is not linear, and it's not indefinite. So wines will get better, and at some point they'll plateau, and maybe they fall off a bit, and maybe they get a little bit better again, and then at some point they're going to drop off. And this curve of the quality over time for wine can be anywhere from 1 year to 100 years. It really depends on the wine we're talking about, the style, and the particular wine and whatnot. So that aspect of scarcity, because people are consuming the bottles over time, the availability of a supply and demand pricing scheme, where the more people are buying tokens, the price is going up, and the more people are selling those tokens, it's going down, and the amount of tokens is being reduced over time as people are redeeming them and turning them into bottles. Makes a very interesting case for tokenomics of a digital asset. So that's basically the element of tokenization. The second thing that was mentioned, when Millie mentioned earlier, has to do with traceability and how we relate attributes using the transparency that a global ledger, the blockchain, and other tools allows us. And transparency. So I'm just going to show this. This basically is what we're doing. It's called biodigital certification. And let's just take the element of organic wine. So I produce, my wine is organic, but consider that wine itself is really interesting in the fact that there are so many different attributes that a winery assigns to their product, to influence the value, the sellability. So in my case, I'm doing organic wine from a specific location in Mendoza. So provenance is interesting. If it's organic, if it's biodynamic, if it's a natural wine, if it's apt for vegans, if it's a kosher wine, if it's a specific varietal. So I'm doing a Malbec Petit Verdot Cabernet Sauvignon, who the winemaker is, if it's a carbon footprint and sustainability. All of these are different attributes that we currently assign to our product. And the way we usually communicate this with our consumers is with a variety of stickers or labels on the bottle saying this is an organic wine from Mendoza, etc., etc. The problem that we have today is that the way we testify this attribution is usually through a certification. So in the case of organic, a winery hires a third party, a certifying company, to do an audit. And the auditor will say, yep, you're certified this year to be organic, and you can put organic on the label. The problem with this is twofold. First of all, it's expense, right? So I have to pay a company to tell me and tell the world something that I already know, right? So it's just adding to the cost of the bottle. But more importantly, and this really applies a lot more when we're talking about the importance of encouraging sustainability in the wine industry and in all industries, is that the incentives for the certifiers, the incentives for the auditors, is misaligned with the certification itself. So when I pay a company to come to my vineyard and do the audit, usually it ends up us having coffee, sitting around the table, and they say, well, Mike, did you spray pesticides on your grapes this year? And I say, no, I didn't. And they say, great, can we see some receipts of things that you bought that don't include anything you're not supposed to buy? And I show them some receipts. And every so often they'll say, well, let's go have a look at the vineyard, and we'll walk around, and they'll say, great, you're certified until next year. My point being that the certifier has every incentive to say yes to me, I am certified, because of course, if I get rejected from my certifier, I'm not going to be calling them next year and paying them for the service. So their loyalty to me is to make sure that I do get certified. And even if I do something that's not within the organic realm, you know, they might wink and say, okay, you shouldn't do that. Don't do that again. We'll just pretend we didn't see that, because they don't want to lose a perennial customer, right? And at the same time, they're selling a service for a fixed price. So the less amount of time, the less diligence that they can do in certifying me means they're going to get a better return on their service. So as quickly as possible, let's get you certified and see you again next year. Well, of course, this opens up all kinds of ways to cheat, and it creates a certification mechanism which is diluted, watered down, and less corresponds to what the consumer has in their mind and what we as a society want to encourage in sustainable viticulture. So the way we tackle this problem is with biodigital certification, and it basically has these three pillars. One is to clearly define what is organic, using existing legislation, using rules that already are in the marketplace, in something that somebody can read and understand and say, okay, this is what organic is. Providing a mechanism such that the winery can provide artifacts of proof, and this can be camera images, IoT, or sensor data from devices in the vineyard or in the winery, work logs that a worker can on a daily basis say, well, today we're pruning, or we're harvesting, or we're irrigating, or describe the tasks that they're doing, their work log, and information about what are the purchases of products that went into to growing the grapes and making the wine, and all these types of things, plus any type of analytical data of soil samples or water samples or anything that they wish to provide, that basically say, these are the arguments of why I am an organic vineyard, I'm an organic winery. I don't need to pay someone else to look at 1/10 of my data or 1/1000th of my data, because basically the amount of information I can share is multiple orders of magnitude by having this mechanism. But there's a third stage, which was the challenger bounty. And basically what we do here is the winery says, great, this is what organic means. Here is my proof of why I'm organic. And I'm going to, through a smart contract on the blockchain, block a bounty of money, let's say $5,000 for 30 days, And if anybody wants to challenge me because they have evidence that actually I'm not organic, I'm cheating, right? This could be a neighbor, a competitor, a disgruntled employee, maybe somebody that's been selling me herbicides that I shouldn't be using, whatever it is. If somebody says, I know these guys are not telling the truth, they can post their arguments, their evidence of why I'm not organic. And this goes to an anonymous court that's on the blockchain as well, of people that look at the evidence and vote. And based on the decision of the jury's vote, either I get my 5,000 back, in which case I haven't spent any money in certifying, or the bounty goes to the challenger. And there's an appeals process and there's elements to make this as fair as possible. But basically, we're using game theory to transform the way we can defend what our attributes are. Again, being organic, single vineyard, the grapes we're using, the region, whatever it is that we want to have these attributes without going to the traditional certifying bodies or apelaciones or denominación de origen, or whatever it is that at the end of the day makes the wine more expensive for the consumer and doesn't make the wine any better, right? So this is the aspect of transparency through biodigital certification. And the third element is traceability. And this is really more about how can we connect the winery with the consumer, with the drinker, right? And so in this case, what we do is we enable a QR code on the bottle. This is a serialized QR code, so every bottle has a different QR code. Whoever's drinking the bottle can scan the QR code. They can provide some information about themselves. So we ask a questionnaire, 5 questions of what their drinking experience was, and allow them to take a selfie. And through this, they are able to mint an NFT of their drinking experience. But more importantly, what happens is now they become a shareholder of the winery. They're actually participating in the winery. Currently, we've been doing this through a contract with a block of shares with the winery. And our next phase will be doing this through a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. So the idea is to break the problem that exists today with perceiving quality. So there's 2 ways that we perceive quality today about wines. One is I send a bottle off to Robert Parker or Jensen Robinson or Tim Atkins or whoever your favorite wine critic is. I pay the money and they take 2 or 3 tastes of my wine and they say, fine, that's 95 points or whatever it is. Now, the wine critics, I don't dispute their legitimacy or their authority or their ability to qualify wines. They are experts, but there's basically 2 problems with this setup. One problem is their experience is very anecdotal, meaning that they're tasting 2 or 3 sips of one glass and on to the next wine. And so they're not having the experience of a whole glass or with a meal or repeated bottles, right? We're just getting this one very point in time evaluation, and that can be very skewed. The second problem is I can send off a bottle to one of these critics and they can say, that's fantastic, it's a 95 point Parker or whatever, but who is to ensure that the bottles that I'm sending later to the consumers is actually the same wine, right? And so it's a system that can be manipulated or gamed. The other way that we perceive quality today is through crowdsourcing of opinion, right? So if you've used the app Vivino, if you use Vivino, you can say this is a 2-star or a 4-star or 5-star wine very quickly with the app, in the same way that we evaluate places with TripAdvisor and a whole other host of crowdsourced opinions. The problem with with this model is the person providing the information, the feedback, the opinion, the consumer doesn't have any real incentive for doing this and investing any time to provide any more information or details, because of course they're not getting anything back from it. So if in the case of Vivino, I'm a regular Vivino user, I'll scan bottles that I've drunk just to know how they were, but I really don't pay much attention to thinking too hard about how many stars I'm going to give them. The other problem is that a lot of times these platforms, especially TripAdvisor as an example, are used as a way to punish a bad service. So you might go to a hotel or a restaurant and have a great time and never do anything about it. But if you had a bad time, you say, "Oh, I'm going to get on TripAdvisor and give them a bad rating," right? So this kind of skews the reality as what we're after is how do we connect with that person? How do we get some real feedback that we can point to the rest of the world and say, this is what the world thinks about it. And this is the reason why these people invested a little bit more time in giving this consideration. So that's basically OpenVino. We break it down into tokenizing, allowing wineries to do self-certification of their wines, and enabling a winery to get actual feedback that's meaningful from the consumer, because you're giving something to the drinker in exchange. Like I said, this will be our 6th year tokenizing. So far, we've only been tokenizing wineries from my winery, from Costa Flores. The wine's called, like my name, Mike Tango Bravo. And every token has been MTB 18, MTB 19, and now we'll have MTB 23. We've been working a lot this past year to finish some of the development aspects of these 3 different pieces to enable wineries that want to do the same thing, and they don't have to do all 3 modules. They could maybe just tokenize or maybe just self-certify, to access this platform free. So it's not a licensing free scheme. Basically, it allows anyone to use it. All of our code and development is open source. So there's the transparency there to allow wineries to not only see how it works and understand that there's no black box in the middle, but also if they wanted to change or add some aspects to it, that's available as well. And we see how this can not only benefit the wineries and the consumers, but also the traditional supply chain. So in the case of importers or distributors or shops, they can participate as well in acquiring and trading tokens. Maybe they see a good price on a wine and they say, I'm going to get 1,000 tokens because I want to have 1,000 bottles to sell this. And then maybe their rotation and sales isn't going the way they expected. And so they can sell these back onto the exchange. They're not locked into this. So it opens up, it gets rid of a lot of the chicken and egg problem with addressing new markets. To give you an example, I'm exporting our wines to the US, to Europe, Brazil, Uruguay, and then here in Argentina. But we now have a lot of token holders in Mexico and a growing number in Colombia. So now I can go to a wine importer in Mexico and say, look, I'm not asking you to take a leap of faith with my product. I'm not buying into the marketplace with a huge investment to start out with. I've already got buyers that are holding these tokens that are going to want to redeem these bottles. So basically, you can operate as a forwarder, as a pass-through, receiving, importing, and delivering these to the token holders. The token holders themselves can be not just individuals, but shops, restaurants, distributors. So it gets a foot in the door to start this, whereas before it would be just another wine label that I'm going to this importer and say, you don't have anybody asking for this product, you've never heard of it, but I want you to sell it in your region, right? And the token holders themselves have acquired an asset that may or may not increase in value over time as they expected, but they have instant liquidity. They are able to sell these tokens 24/7. It's a decentralized or a DeFi marketplace, so it doesn't require that like in a traditional exchange where there has to be a buyer if there's going to be a seller, right? It doesn't work that way. Anybody can buy or sell 24/7. So right now, basically, we're doing two things. We're finishing up the development on the remaining pieces, making adjustments to sensors, to the certification mechanisms and whatnot, and talking to wineries that are interested in utilizing these, the open source tools of OpenVino to do their own tokenization, biodigital certification, and you drink it, you own it, traceability. That's basically where we are right now. So if any of you are wineries that are interested, of course, the branding of your product will remain the same. You decide the name of the token, when you're going to issue it. You're holding the wallet with all of your tokens. The interaction with your customers is yours. We don't have any custodial hold of wines or tokens on behalf of wineries. Everyone owns their own things. That's the beauty of a decentralized world on the blockchain. But basically what we enable is for you to do access this platform without having to create it from scratch. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mike, for the presentation of OpenVino, and we believe this was the best way and a very comprehensive way of showing what we're trying to explain at the beginning, when we're talking about the sustainable benefits that blockchain technology can have in the wine industry, as well as the financial ones, especially considering that the tokenization of the bottles of wine can meet an optimization of the cash cycle as well, meaning for financial benefits, and also with a better communication as well, relationship directly with the consumer. These are a few of the conclusions that we wanted to get there as a way of understanding that this can be a very holistic solution to some of the main pain points that the wine industry has already been feeling. I know that we're running a little bit late on time, but maybe we could open up to a question or two, and already letting you guys know that our information is already in the chat in case of other question happenings, or if you guys are interested in the raffle, to please contact us, especially Mike, for making the time to be here, and also everyone for coming to this webinar. Our main idea was to present the possibility of having these two worlds correlating and working with each other, even though they can be very different, it can be very similar. We have a few minutes left, so beyond of the questions that there may be, and the contacts that you can have on Woodtick, that's our email, as well as our Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as OpenVino, and Mike that's putting the different ways of contacting him on the web. Please let us know here. We have a couple of minutes, and then we will contact you on the raffle. Anyone that would like to say something, comment on something, please. Mics are open. All right. If we're having a shy audience, then we're more than open to hear you or wait for your contact over email.
Actually, I have a question, if I may. I did miss a little bit more details about the raffle. Could you say a bit more about it?
Absolutely. So we are raffling 6 bottles of MTB 2021 or MTB 21 of Mike's Costa Flores, actually harvest of 2021. If anyone wants to participate into the raffle, you guys would need to send us an email over here. I will resend it, and it's going to be right under Mike's contacts. So let us know, and then we'll raffle it and send a video how it was done live, and you guys can receive it on your wallet. So you can also have the experience of having your first tokenized bottle of wine in your wallet, and delicious wine as well, because I've had the luck to try Mike's wine many times as well. Right. So again, everyone, thank you for having us. Contact us in case of any doubts, in interests in joining OpenVino, in knowing how to do the process through it, whether it's just a tokenization of the bottles of wine, or maybe the barrels of wine, or the part of certification of any other kind of standards beyond organic, like the ones that have to do with sustainability programs, or as well carbon neutral, and other ideas that you might be interested to explore or doubts you would like to have with us. Know that we're here for you. And again, thank you for coming here, and Mike as well for being present as well with your brilliant presentation. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you all
all.
so much. And if you have any other questions, or just reach out on many ways that we've provided here, and we can have a further discussion.
Great.
Okay, so I think that's all. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. And until next time, bye.
Bye.